What's going on, everybody? Today's going to be a little bit of a different video because we're not going to be gaming or vlogging. We're actually going to be looking at some PC parts. Now, just a disclaimer before I get into the video, I'm not saying if you get these specific parts or this specific build that you'll get a performance or a great FPS. All I'm saying is that these are some parts that I can recommend that I used and also did some research on. Now, this is a budget / mid-range PC. The way I say budget is because it's not like $800. And I say mid-range because it's around $500, $600. Now remember that PC parts go up and down in price, so make sure to keep an eye on them and just be patient. Now in my opinion, this is a great build for beginners that are switching from maybe console or are just getting straight into their first PC build. The first part we're going to look at is our CPU. I chose the AMD Ryzen 3 1200. It's a quad-core CPU that comes with its own stock cooler, which is perfect because we're not going to be overclocking with this CPU or motherboard. The reason why I went with the 1200 over the 2200G or the 3200G is because of price and also performance. So the 2200G actually went up about $90 in price since I bought my own. I got mine for about $70, $80. Right now you can find it for maybe $170, $160. Now again, like I said, PC parts, their prices go up and down, so you can of course find the 2200G for a lower price than $160. And also if you just want to put out a little bit more money to get that 2200G, that CPU will still work with this build perfectly fine and might give you a little bit more performance. Now the reason I went with this over the 3200G is because of our GPU, which I'll get into later. So next is going to be a pretty important part of our build. It's the Crucial Ballistics 3200MHz DDR4 16GB RAM kit. RAM is really important, especially in an AMD build, because Ryzen processors love RAM. So make sure you get a really high speed, such as 3200MHz or 3600. But make sure to do your research on your motherboard because motherboards do cap out at a certain speed, and the one we're using today that I'm showing you caps out at 3200. So you can't go for 3600 unless you go for something like a B450. But again, do your research, read some stuff. 3200MHz and especially 16GB, it's perfect for those who want to play really high-end games and also record / stream on the same PC. If you just plan on playing a few games and don't plan on recording or streaming, you can go for 8GB. But I would definitely recommend 16, especially since I started at 8 and really regretted not going 16 right away. Next is our Gigabyte GA A320 S2H motherboard. Make sure that it's an AMD AM4 if you're not going with this motherboard because the Ryzen's only use AM4 sockets. This comes with 2 DDR slots, which means dual channel memory, which is great for AMD Ryzen processors. It's not a high-end board, but it's definitely reliable, and in my opinion, since I have it, the BIOS is really easy to move around and it's also just great. Now, it's not future-proof, so you can go for something like a B450, which is going to be a little bit more money, but make sure that it's compatible with your CPU and your GPU. The next part is going to be our SSD. Now, definitely make sure you get an SSD if you're going to be playing games. This is an Adata SU800 256GB SATA 3 SSD. It's really fast, it's the one that I have in my system, and this is something you want to put your operating system on and online games. For example, I have Rainbow Six Siege and I have Fortnite on this. You definitely don't want to put something like Rainbow Six Siege or Fortnite on a hard drive because it'll make your game move a lot slower. Speaking of hard drives, we definitely need a hard drive still. Especially if you're going to be recording and or streaming because you can save your videos onto your hard drive to keep some space in your SSD for games and updates. So I always go for WD Blue hard drives. This is a 1TB and you can also go up to 2 or 3, especially since hard drive prices right now are really great. Definitely go for a high-speed hard drive like 7200 RPMs to make sure you get the best performance you can possibly get out of your hard drive. So the difference between hard drives and solid-state drives, or SSDs for those who don't know, is that hard drives are mechanical. There are a lot of moving parts and they're a lot slower than SSDs, which is just one thing. Next, we have a really important part of our build, our GPU. So this is the XFX Radeon RX 570, 8GB of GDDR5 VRAM. This is the exact card that I have in my system. You can see here for $140. You can also get it a little bit cheaper when it goes on sale on other websites, but I always recommend getting your parts from Amazon. Now the reason why I like the RX 570 is I personally use it. It has HDMI, DVI, and then also DisplayPort. And it also comes with the AMD software. The AMD software is really great for those who want to record or stream on a low budget PC because it takes all the pressure and weight off your CPU and does all your encoding and your streaming straight off of your GPU. Now when it comes to RAM in your GPU, you don't want to go any lower than 4. 6 is where you're going to be comfortable and 8 is where you're going to get really high performance. Now again, these are just recommendations. These are just parts that I like personally for this build. You don't have to get these parts. I'm not saying you're going to get the same performance as I am. You can definitely go for an NVIDIA card too, those are also great. Just make sure that it won't bottleneck your CPU, which we'll get into later. Next we have our case. This is the NZXT H510. It's a compact ATX mid-tower, which means it's going to have a lot of space for you to put all of your parts. It's also a little bit future-proof with the front I/O offering a USB Type-C port, and it's great with tempered glass side panels instead of acrylic. On the back you'll find great cable management, and it's also water cooling ready, and it has a PSU shroud to hide all of your wires. This case also comes with two 120mm fans on the back and the top to help with your airflow. So our final part is going to be our PSU. This is something you definitely don't want to cheap out on because it can go up in flames. So the one that I'm showing you here is the Corsair CX 450 watt 80 plus bronze certified power supply unit. Now this is okay for the build that I have because it's about 350. It doesn't leave me a lot of room to upgrade. So if I needed to upgrade, I might have to go up to maybe 550 or 650 watts. Make sure to use a website like PC Part Picker to find out what wattage your PC build is going to be. Another thing, definitely don't get anything that's not 80 plus certified. Now earlier I mentioned bottlenecking. This is when your CPU is either too strong or too weak for your GPU and vice versa, resulting in your CPU lowering its performance or your GPU lowering its performance to match each other. In this website that I'll link down in the description, you can put in your CPU or the GPU that you plan on using, and then it'll give you the average bottleneck percentage. So for this CPU and GPU combination, it'll give me about 6%. This is great because you want as low as possible. Another great website to find FPS based on community samples is userbench.com. In here you can choose your game, choose your GPU and your CPU, and based on other people's performance that they give the website, you can find the average FPS. For example, this GPU and CPU on high settings 1080p for Rainbow Six Siege, someone got 120 FPS average. For me personally, with the Ryzen 3 2200G RX 570 high 1080, I averaged somewhere around 140. For the GPU and CPU on Fortnite, they got an average of 89, which is great because it's over 60 FPS, and you definitely don't want to get anything lower than 60. League of Legends on here shows 100 FPS. For me, on these same exact specs, Ryzen 3 2200G for the CPU of course, I get about 130. The final game I'm showing is Minecraft. Someone on here got an average 300. Personally, for my Ryzen 3 2200G build, I get around 180 to 110.
I cannot breathe through toxic skies. You pollute me with your lies. Thought I'd die along with my sense of time.